Most people have the urge to work and venture abroad, whether it's because of higher conversion rates, fascinating scenery, or the desire to learn about different cultures. The experience can be venturous, enriching one's life and broadening horizons. There, one might encounter friendly and polite locals who offer job opportunities, believing it's a harmless and generous gesture. But unbeknownst to them, some locals have a dark and twisted plan. In today's video, we delve into the tragic story of Lindsay Ann Hawker, a 22-year-old British woman who met a horrific fate in Japan in 2007. Before we get into this case, I want to warn you that this is a very disturbing and graphic story, so viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Lindsay's story is one of adventure, ambition, and a thirst for new experiences. Born on December 30th, 1984 to her parents Bill and Julia Hawker, Lindsay was a happy child who grew up with two sisters, Louise and Lisa. She attended King Henry VIII School and later pursued her passion for biology at the University of Leeds, where she excelled academically and achieved a first-class honors grade in 2006. Despite her success, Lindsay knew that there was more to life than just academics. She was a bright, nurturing, and caring individual who had a hunger for new experiences. And in mid-2006, she decided to take a year out of her busy schedule to do some traveling and gain a fresh perspective on life. Lindsay's plan was to work while she traveled, and she found the perfect opportunity with Nova Teaching School in Japan. Nova is Japan's largest private English school, and Lindsay was one of the lucky few who managed to secure a spot. She arrived in Tokyo in October 2006 and was assigned to Kaiwa, a district in the Edogawa ward of Tokyo. Kaiwa was the perfect location for Lindsay, with its close proximity to Akihabara and Asakusa, two of Tokyo's most vibrant and exciting areas. Whether she was in the mood for food, parks, shopping, temples, or just a good drink, it had it all. Lindsay's year in Japan was a life-changing experience. She not only gained valuable work experience, but also made lifelong friends and discovered a new culture. Her time in Japan gave her a fresh perspective on life and helped her to become the successful, well-rounded individual. She found herself in the midst of one of the most captivating cities the world had to offer, and she couldn't help but fall in love with it. Tokyo had stolen her heart, but she decided to venture a little further east to a place called Chiba. The rent was more affordable there, and she also found herself sharing a place with two other teachers who worked at a different school. It didn't take long for the three of them to become fast friends, and Lindsay's time in Tokyo started to fly by. Despite her excitement and love for her new surroundings, Lindsay often found herself thinking about home. She had a loving family, a tight-knit group of friends, and a boyfriend waiting for her back in England. But she made sure to keep in touch through Facebook, Skype, texts, and phone calls. It was during her 6th month in Tokyo, in March 2007, that Lindsay had an uncomfortable encounter. After finishing work for the day, Lindsay made her way back to Chiba Station to collect her bike. As she was unlocking it, a man approached her from behind. When she turned around, he greeted her by saying, "You are my English teacher." Lindsay was taken aback and confused. She was certain that he wasn't one of her students. Awkwardly, she declined to comment, but the man persisted, following her closely. Feeling a sense of unease, Lindsay hopped on her bike and began to pedal away. However, the man continued to pursue her, his walking turning into jogging, and then his jogging into running. With Chiba's maze-like roads and intersecting walkways, it seemed almost impossible for Lindsay to escape him. He kept striking up a conversation, asking her where she was from and where she studied. Despite her attempts to shake him off, he persisted. Finally, Lindsay reached her apartment and came to a stop. The man, known as Tatsuya Ichihashi, had been chasing her the entire way. Exhausted, he had a proposal to make. Despite his strange behavior, his offer was simple and innocent enough. Tatsuya had been chasing Lindsay through the streets of Chiba, and finally, he mustered up the courage to ask her for English lessons. He was struggling with the language and felt like he needed a little bit of help. He suggested they meet in a cafe, and he promised to pay her generously by the hour. But unfortunately, Lindsay had to decline his offer politely. Her work schedule was already jam-packed, and the little time she had off was reserved for having fun. Tatsuya was disappointed, but he accepted her answer. However, he had one final, strange request. He was thirsty and asked Lindsay if she could provide him with a glass of water in her apartment. Lindsay was hesitant, but she reluctantly agreed. She had 2 roommates, and this was an opportunity to show the man that she had company at all times. They entered the apartment together, and while Tatsuya was having his drink, he made the offer again. This time, he offered to pay Lindsay 3,500 yen or $32 an hour, and the interaction would be strictly business. Lindsay couldn't refuse the offer. Although Nova was helping her get by in Tokyo, she could do with some extra cash, and this was easy money. She agreed to his request and decided to meet him at a coffee shop a few days later. Tatsuya was appreciative and thanked Lindsay for the offer. Before he left her apartment, he wanted to give her one last thing. He whipped out a pen from his back pocket, grabbed some scrap paper, and started scribbling something. A few moments later, he handed her the note. It was a sketch he had just drawn of Lindsay, and along with the sketch was his name and phone number. Tatsuya Ichihashi, a man with a mysterious past and a dark side. Born in Gifu Prefecture on January 5, 1979, Tatsuya grew up with big dreams of becoming a medical doctor like his father. However, when he failed his exams and was denied the opportunity to advance his studies, he settled for a degree in horticulture from Chiba University. Despite graduating with decent grades, Tatsuya made no effort to find work, and instead relied on a monthly allowance of 100,000 yen or $970 back then from his successful parents. But there's more to Tatsuya than meets the eye. He had no previous convictions with the law, but there were allegations of prior theft and injury. It said that he assaulted a woman during a robbery, but the matter was settled out of court when his father paid the woman off with a whopping 1 million yen. Tatsuya was also known to be a bit of a loner, with an obsession for physical fitness. He regularly hit the gym and cycled over 25 kilometers every day. But with only $970 a month to live on, English tutoring sessions at $32 an hour were hardly sustainable. Now let's return to Lindsay's apartment. After Tatsuya handed her the sketch with his name and number, he thanked Lindsay and wished her well. They agreed to meet again in a few days. Fast forward to Saturday, March 24th, 2007. Lindsay had reached out to Tatsuya a couple of days prior, and they had arranged their first English lesson at a local coffee shop. As they stood in line to grab their drinks, CCTV captured their conversation. Lindsay appeared relaxed, but she would take a step back whenever Tatsuya got too close. They sat down and spoke for over an hour, making good progress. However, at the end of their lesson, Tatsuya awkwardly realized that he had forgotten his money. "No worries," he said. "I live just half a mile down the road. Why don't you come by and grab your money and then be on your way?" Lindsay agreed, and they hopped into a taxi. Lindsay hadn't brought her bike that day, and she had work later in the afternoon. When they arrived at Tatsuya's apartment, she asked the taxi driver if he could wait for her. He agreed, and Lindsay followed Tatsuya inside. Several minutes passed, and Lindsay still hadn't returned. The taxi driver found it a little strange, but he thought maybe she had a change of plans. He left, completely forgetting about the incident. However, Lindsay failed to show up for work that afternoon, and even worse, she never made it back to her apartment either. Her housemates, realizing she wasn't at work, started to worry about Lindsay. They called the police later that night to report her missing. As Saturday turned into Sunday and Sunday turned into Monday, Lindsay's family and friends back home in the United Kingdom grew increasingly worried about her silence. It was only after she missed a second day of work on Monday that panic truly set in. The school had reached out to Lindsay's parents to inform them that she had missed 2 consecutive days. Concerned, they immediately contacted the police. It wasn't until then that the authorities began to take Lindsay's disappearance seriously. The search for Lindsay began at her home, where her housemates were the first to be questioned. Luckily, they already had a suspect in mind. They knew that Lindsay had met with a man at a coffee shop shortly before she vanished, and that she had left behind a sketch of him in her apartment. This was their first clue. At around 5:40 p.m., 2 officers were dispatched to Tatsuya's home. After knocking on his door, they received no answer. However, his neighbors were home and kindly allowed the officers to peer over the balcony and into Tatsuya's living room. Although there were no lights on, they could see someone lurking inside. Strangely enough, Tatsuya's detachable bathtub had been moved from the bathroom to the balcony. The officers called for backup, fearing that Lindsay might be inside, being held hostage. Within the hour, 7 more officers arrived, bringing the total to 9. After 3 long hours, the police were prepared to raid Tatsuya's home. Just as they were about to make their move, Tatsuya unexpectedly swung open his front door, clutching a rucksack. In a split second of panic, Tatsuya stormed past the police, who only managed to grab his rucksack. Tatsuya himself slipped away, and with the building's narrow and confusing hallways, the police lost sight of him. Tatsuya vanished into thin air, and he was nowhere to be found. The scene that awaited the police officers investigating Tatsuya's property was nothing short of gruesome. Just moments after arriving, they stumbled upon the naked body of Lindsay Hawker, buried in Tatsuya's detachable bathtub. Lindsay had been bound and gagged with plastic ties and scarves, and bruises covered her upper body. In her final hour, she had been subjected to an extended assault. Her possessions were still scattered across the room, along with the body, sand, and soil in the balcony bathtub. To speed up the process of decomposition, a decomposing agent had been added to the mix, and flower seeds were placed on top to disguise the bathtub as a flower bed. The seeds would eventually feed off Lindsay's body, adding to the harrowing discovery. As if the scene wasn't disturbing enough, it was also noted that Tatsuya had shaved all of Lindsay's hair off her head. Several wigs were found in his apartment, leading to rumors that he was a crossdresser. Some even speculated that he had killed Lindsay to wear her hair as a wig. By the next morning, Tatsuya Ichihashi was a wanted man across all of Japan. Wanted posters were distributed, interviews were given, and raids were conducted at locations where he may have been spotted. But despite all efforts, Tatsuya remained elusive. He was so good at evading the police that they even released photoshopped images of him wearing wigs, just in case he was out in drag. The search for Tatsuya continued for weeks, but all sightings turned into dead ends. He was like a ghost, disappearing without a trace. The police were desperate to capture him, but he remained one step ahead. Tatsuya's disappearance was a nightmare that turned into a never-ending horror story for her family. Weeks turned into months, and months turned into years, with no sign of their beloved daughter's killer. The pain of her loss was unbearable, but what made it worse was the feeling that her killer had gotten away with it. It wasn't just a sense of injustice that plagued them. They also grew increasingly disillusioned with the Japanese police, perceiving their investigations as lazy and sloppy. In a bold move, just months after her death, they traveled to Japan to raise awareness of Lindsay's killer. Her father, Bill, even met with members of the notorious Japanese mafia, the Yakuza, in a bar, offering them 2 bottles of whiskey as a gift before asking for their help. As time went on, the Japanese police found themselves in the center of the spotlight, with questions being raised about their competence and dedication to solving the case. Why did it take them a whole month to interrogate crucial witnesses? And did they even realize that their wanted poster featured a picture that was 7 years outdated? The tension between the police and the Hawker family grew, and soon the British and Japanese media were involved. Meanwhile, Lindsay's killer, Tatsuya, was still out there, traveling across Japan and remaining unnoticed. He even lived in a concrete bunker on a remote island to avoid detection. A year after Lindsay's tragic demise in 2008, and throughout 2009, Tatsuya found himself in Osaka, a bustling city located 250 miles west of Tokyo. Known for its modern architecture, vibrant nightlife, and mouth-watering street food, Osaka served as a temporary home for Tatsuya. He frequented internet cafes and took up odd jobs on construction sites to survive. Saving up whatever money he could, he invested it in plastic surgery, desperately attempting to alter his appearance and evade capture by the law. But little did he know, his days of evading the law were numbered. Tatsuya had gone to great lengths to change his appearance, resorting to self-mutilation to throw off the authorities. He had cut off his moles, sliced a part of his lower lip with scissors, and even threaded a needle through his nose to alter its shape. It was a drastic transformation, but it seemed to be working. By the summer of 2009, the police were growing desperate to catch Tatsuya. They raised the cash reward for any information, leading to his arrest from 1 million to a whopping 10 million yen. They also released a statement warning the public that Tatsuya had likely undergone plastic surgery to further change his appearance. People were urged to be on the lookout for any resemblances to his unique features. And their efforts paid off. In October of that same year, a plastic surgeon in Nagoya contacted the police, claiming that he had just operated on Tatsuya. The foolish criminal had even agreed to take before and after pictures of the procedure, which were promptly shared with the authorities and eventually made their way into the public eye. Tatsuya's cover was blown, and one of his colleagues at a construction site in Osaka recognized him. Realizing that he had to act quickly, Tatsuya devised a plan. He would flee to Okinawa, just as he had done in previous close calls, and seek refuge in one of the abandoned concrete bunkers scattered across the remote islands. On November 10, 2009, he discreetly made his way to Osaka's ferry port, hoping to board a slow ferry to Takanawa and finally find safety away from the clutches of justice. But before he could even step foot on the boat, a worker at the port recognized his face and alerted security. It turned out to be the Ichihashi they had been searching for. Within moments, Tatsuya found himself face to face with a group of determined officers, his escape slipping through his fingers. As they asked for his name, Tatsuya Ichihashi knew it was all over. He reluctantly admitted to his identity, and the game was up. The police formally arrested him, charging him with abandoning a body. But that was just the beginning. 2 more warrants were served for rape and murder, and it would take 8 long months before he finally faced his jury on July 4, 2011. From the outset, the outcome of the trial seemed certain. All eyes were on Japan's court system, wondering how they would punish Tatsuya. While the death penalty is enforced in Japan, it's not often given to single-person murderers. But Tatsuya was a well-known figure in the media, and many voices supported the idea. During the trial, Tatsuya admitted to luring Lindsay into his apartment, raping her, and then strangling her. He feared that neighbors would hear her scream and call the police. The trial was devastating for Lindsay's family, who had to relive her final moments and see new images of her body, something they regretted ever seeing. On July 21, 2011, Tatsuya Ichihashi was officially sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of Lindsay Hawker. While Lindsay's family had asked for the death penalty, the court felt that it wasn't appropriate. Tatsuya had no previous convictions, and at the age of 32, there was still a chance that he could one day become rehabilitated. In a heart-wrenching statement to the media, Lindsay's parents finally spoke out after Tatsuya's sentence was handed down.
We've waited a long time for today. We've waited 4.5 years to get justice for Lindsay, and we have achieved that today, and we're very pleased.
Thank you.
The nation, for the most part, welcomed the verdict that would lock Tatsuya behind bars for the rest of his life. Even Tatsuya himself seemed to have accepted his fate, as he had authored and published a book confessing to Lindsay's murder before the trial. In this autobiography, he detailed his 2.5 years on the run, revealing the desperate measures he took to evade capture. The book, titled Until I Was Arrested, sold over 100,000 copies worldwide, with all royalties and profits offered to Lindsay's family. However, they rejected the offer, knowing that nothing could bring back their beloved daughter. Lindsay was a shining star, loved by all who knew her. She was in the midst of an incredible experience abroad, teaching others a valuable new skill when her life was taken by a heartless man. Her absence is felt deeply every single day by her devastated parents, her sisters, and all of her friends. Lindsay's memory will forever be cherished, and her spirit will continue to inspire those who were fortunate enough to have known her. Thanks for tuning in to another video by Do Not Sleep. Your support means the world to me, and I'm grateful for each and every one of you who keep coming back for more. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more exciting content. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.